Julian Pearson had been in the book club for almost 3 months. The Bookstagirlies were suspicious when he first joined because he was a straight white male, and they were quietly concerned that he had ulterior motives. But he proved himself when they got through Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Melors, which he was honest about enjoying the first half, but not as much the latter half. Then they read Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and he was cleared of all suspicion. What the Bookstagirlies remained superstitious about was Julian's secret hobby. He only had a part-time job, not a full-time job, and his explanation for this was that his secret hobby took up quite a lot of time. Julian Pearson was tall, had pearly white teeth, and short curls of brown hair he hopelessly tried to straighten out with a comb every day. The rest of the book club was really quite diverse. There were 2 British girls in Ohio on student visas, Ellen and Gigi, with Ellen being a blonde and Gigi being brunette. There was a girl from Brazil, Ophelia, who had immigrated when she was a child. Ophelia worked part-time at a pizza shop while getting her degree in psychology. There was Alexa, an Ohio resident herself and weightlifter who went to college for literature. Then there was Zoe, Paige, and Dolly, all college students. With the exception of Alexa, all these women had Instagram accounts that tracked their readings, and all of them had thousands of followers. Gigi actually had a little more than 10,000, with these followers being fellow readers. Maybe these followers were as tangible as characters from the book they read. On social media, 10,000 might not be a lot to most people, but it was a lot to Julian. If Julian had an Instagram account, he did not disclose it. Alexa followed all the women in the book club using her personal Instagram account. Gigi and Ophelia had boyfriends. Julian knew this because they were present like bodyguards when he first joined the book club. Gigi's boyfriend looked like a chunky rabbit, while Ophelia's was a muscular rocker type of dude with long black hair and tattoos. But as the Bookstagirlies' trust in Julian grew, the boyfriends appeared less and less. There had been a man in the book club before Julian, but he was pompous and only wanted to read Goethe and authors with weird German-sounding names. The Bookstagirlies had apparently kicked him out as if it was found out that he was a werewolf and too dangerous to be kept in the book club. This pompous man had supposedly blocked all the Bookstagirlies on Instagram afterwards. It was Alexa who told Julian this. Sometimes they convened in a cafe by a stream and bridge near Alexa's college. Sometimes they met in Alexa's house, sometimes in Ophelia's. It was on a sunny April morning when they met in Alexa's living room, which had a sliding glass door and wall that let in a substantial amount of natural light to make the beige walls come alive and all the trinkets and vases on the mantel above the fireplace pop. There were rocking chairs, a green couch, recliners, and a coffee table. "Good morning, everyone," Julian chirped when all the Bookstagirlies arrived and took their seats. He had sprung up from where he had been sitting. He was wearing a white and brown checkered shirt and had shaved, and there was something dazzling in his eyes and smile. "I thought I'd propose a book today." "Hey, what is it?" Gigi feigned. Her British accent always made Alexa think of Harry Potter. "Well," Julian tilted his head. "All of you stay right here. I brought copies for everyone." He went out to his car and came back with a cardboard box, putting it down on the coffee table and handing out copies of a novel to all the Bookstagirlies. "What is this?" Ophelia asked, chortling at the cover, which was of a sinister man with black ringed eyes smiling in front of a background. There was a cross barely visible in some mist in the bottom left-hand corner of the cover, and a disappointment entered the living room when the Bookstagirlies saw who the author was. Vultures might as well have been circling above the house while the Bookstagirlies turned their copies over and scanned the synopsis. One of them flipped through the pages while Julian finished handing out the copies. "It's called Death Wears Epaulets," he said with a dazzle sparkling in his voice. How prematurely he lit the fireworks within his heart. "By Julian Pearson," Gigi complained, examining the book to see if it was really a book at all. "Yeah," Julian said, trying to keep himself from giggling. He put his hands on his hips and looked around. "What do you think? Do you guys want to read the first chapter?" Is this self-published? Ophelia queried. Yeah, Julian admitted, but there is still excitement about him. Well, all the agents I queried said no, so I just used Amazon to make this. Did you have an editor? Ellen asked. What's it about? Zoe asked. Julian had to swivel. He was overjoyed that they were asking all these questions. Gigi got up and thwacked Julian in the back of his head with her copy of Death Wears Epaulets. Confused, he turned around. She promptly thwacked him across the face with the book. His head obeyed the impact and snapped to the side. What was odd was the lack of protest from the rest of the girls in the book club. All Alexa could do was widen her eyes when Ophelia sprung up and forced Julian down into the coffee table. He let out a grunt. Ellen got up and started hitting him in the back with her copy of Death Wears Epaulets. Gigi hurried into the kitchen, pulled open a cabinet, and the jingling of silverware sounded while the Bookstagirlies continually beat Julian Pearson with his own book. You guys don't want to read my book? He asked between hits. They didn't answer him. Their hair went crazy, the sound of the books thwacking and thwacking on his back and on the back of his head. One of them even spanked him with the book. The volleys only grew in speed. A species of harpy was in their hands, with the wings being 100 of pages flapping, coming down and up on Julian, who laid face down on the coffee table. Gigi hurried back into the kitchen with a steak knife. Ophelia saw it catch the gleam of the sun and gasped. Good idea! And hurried off into the kitchen after giving Julian one giant spanking. He let out a shriek when Ellen started trying to twist his foot around. Girls! Girls! Alexa shouted, and everyone stopped. They batted their eyes and looked at her. Shouldn't we do this outside? She suggested with genius agitation. So they did. They dragged Julian into Alexa's backyard where the beating continued. Gigi had been waiting for Ophelia to come outside, and all the girls delighted when they came out because she had got all of them knives and forks. It was a Barnes & Noble Ides of March. Julian stumbled up, holding his belly with an iron taste in his mouth. He was so disoriented, The sound was exactly like it is in the movies. It was sharp, forceful in the air, and almost absurdly appetizing. Julian groaned when Gigi took the knife out of his side. They formed a circle around him and were pushing him around with the same sound pinning as he bounced from Bookstagirly to Bookstagirly. His eyes were half closed and his mouth was dropped open. He knew his grunts and groaning weren't going to help him, but he let out those gutted deer noises anyway. He had been stabbed so much that the skin that held his belly in place unfastened, and a coil of sausages plopped out and onto the lawn. They watched his eyes roll into his head, but continued stabbing him, blood spurting in all directions. DNF, 1 star. The reviews were in. Stab, stab, stab. He collapsed onto his own guts, and they started kicking him. The kicking died down, and the sound of their panting started up. Gigi blew a strand of hair out of her face while they all looked down at him. Ellen spat on him, the wad of saliva splatting down on the back of his head like a squashed snail. While they stood over his body catching their breaths, Alexa picked up one of the discarded copies of Death Wears Epaulets. She started reading it to find something silly to say about it or to see how bad it was. She turned the page and continued reading, muttering the words under her unsteady breath. Her eyes narrowed in disbelief. She turned around to the Bookstagirlies and said, "Hey, this is actually pretty good." With nothing else to do, the rest of them looked for the copies that they had traded in for knives and started reading too while its author lay dead and gutless on the grass. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. A quick shout out to my patrons: Melissa Perez, Lawrence Wallen, Eric Cifuentes, Jesse Hartley, Icy Narrates, Alonzo, Cupcake Hips, William Hartley, Rinku Starr, Austin My Love, Mr. Sankofa, Seven Cities Journalist, and Ellie Hutmeyer. As usual, guys, I put a link to charity in the description. I'm going to keep it on the LA fires for a hot minute, but I will include other charities a little bit after. I understand that the fires are now no longer big news, but I would still like for the victims of the fires to receive help rebuilding their lives. And as I have been saying, even if that includes you unsubscribing from my Patreon for a while just so that you have something to donate to them, I highly encourage that and I will not be offended. And as usual, feel free to reach out to me on any social media. Let me know how I can be praying for you, and I am more than happy to do that for you. God bless you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.